My name is Timothy Westmyer. I'm currently a program manager at a international nonprofit based out of Arlington, Virginia, called CRDF Global. It used to stand for something long in like Civilian Research Defense Foundation, but now it's just CRDF Global. We were founded in the 90s to help find civilian jobs for former weapons scientists after the Soviet Union collapsed. They didn't have any way to pay for their salaries or their families, so instead of them taking their talents somewhere dangerous, we found civilian jobs for them, and since then have done all kinds of fun capacity building work. So today I work on North Korea, ways to counter North Korea's pathways that they generate revenue for their weapons program. So we help to build capacity on that counterproliferation front. I started as general nonproliferation, arms control areas of expertise. I studied at Georgetown Security Studies program for my MA and focused on nonproliferation and unconventional weapons. So I think I have a background in nonproliferation, arms control. Nuclear testing was one of my areas of interest. I always wanted to work on some version of bringing the nuclear test ban treaty into effect, all of that fun stuff. That's what my education and training is on. Regionally, it's in Asia, East Asia, and parts of Europe. But that my expertise these days is a lot of technical work, but also a fun part of how we do things in the nonproliferation space, which is project management, program management, capacity building, institution collaborations, working and identifying partners around the world who can play a role in nonproliferation. So a lot of what I do these days is managing really great young experts, international training partners, U.S. government funders, those that have missions that align with ours, and building a program that we can actually do something about some of these areas, take ideas from think tanks and bring that into some form of a reality, kind of a mix of foreign assistance development where that meets think tanks and other kinds of engagements around the world. So my skill sets these days are increasingly less about the technical stuff and more about bringing all of that together, which is a role that I did not see myself 10 years ago when I finished grad school. So I started being interested in this work way back in high school because I was a member of our high school debate team, our team policy debate. And I just happened to luck out that year, that it was a weapon of mass destruction topic way back in 2002. And the big issue then was, weapons of mass destruction, nuke bio, chem. And I was really interested in the nuclear test ban treaty. And I started reading a lot more about that. I found that very fascinating. It was an interesting idea. It was relatively, at that point, recent after it had been rejected by the U.S. Senate. So it seemed like there was something we could do about it if we just changed some form of makeup or in the Senate or convinced people of its value. So I thought that actually sounds like a really interesting career path. Also at that time, I read a lot in transcripts about what then Senator Joe Biden was doing in terms of leading some of that floor fight. So I've always interested in those two things, that political angle, the treaty, and then Joe Biden. Then when I graduated from undergrad, after spending a semester at the American University Washington Semester Program in DC, where I got to intern for the Arms Control Center, Arms Control Association, with Daryl and a few others back in 2005, I decided I'm going to come to DC. I'm not going to spend my life in California. Foreign policy is out here. So I came back and started working on these topics and ended up working for then Senator Joe Biden for a while, first in the Senate, then for his campaign the second time he ran for president. Really enjoyed that experience, met my wife there, so no regrets. It was a lot of fun. And then after that, spent time at think tanks like the Council on Foreign Relations, doing research on how Congress can be involved a little bit more in a more effective way on foreign policy. Got my grad degree after that wonderful experience at that think tank. Then I got to make a decision. While I was in grad school, I worked for a while at the U.S. State Department, doing some really cool stuff with Ambassador Bonnie Jenkins, working on nuclear security topics. Nuclear Security Summit series was a big priority. Got to do some really fascinating stuff there on a multilateral diplomacy angle, which I found I really enjoyed this. I also really liked the idea of collaborating with multiple stakeholders. So went from there to a research project at George Washington University, where I worked in a think tank called the Rising Powers Initiative. and we did research and book projects and other kind of big collaborative efforts. And I got to get my teeth sharpened a little bit on project management, collaborating with 20 or so different researchers to put together a book product on what is going on around the world, particularly Asia, on nuclear energy debates, nuclear power debates, nuclear weapon debates. That was fascinating, but I really wanted to get back to that fast-paced. I liked academic life, but I wanted the faster-paced implementation with government side. And that's where I ended up ultimately in 2017 coming to the company that I've been at for, gosh, almost 6 or 7 years now. So my weird way to summarize that is I didn't think I'd end up at this particular place. It's taken a little bit of a windy path, but a lot of the ways that I've gotten to where I am is through talking to people, through mentorship, through maybe lucking out in some places and lucking out of things I thought I would really be interested into. And, maybe that would have worked out well, but finally in a place where I'm enjoying my contributions to the overall mission of making the world safer and more secure. I've done versions of that in the past, sometimes on technical topics, which I can still handle a little bit. But also I find the discussion simply about different ways that you can be involved in international security topics towards a positive end that aren't necessarily the people that maybe you don't know when you first start in this field. I thought the way you made an impact was you either had to work in Congress, you either had to be appointed by the president, or you had to work at a think tank. And there's so many different avenues to be involved in particularly international security and non-proliferation of nukes and other things along those lines. And I don't know all of it, but I've had an interesting slice of this that I've enjoyed. And I've also really enjoyed working with the members of my team and to be able to help build their careers up and also learning from them. So this kind of collaboration and exchange of information is something that really gets me motivated. Well, my other fun, weird hobby is I really enjoy watching film and TV and talking about it that involves nuclear weapon portrayals. It's a thing I do. I run a podcast called the Super Critical Podcast, where since 2016 we watch and talk about the ways that these things are portrayed. And back in the Cold War, there was all kinds of, you couldn't go to the movies without there being some kind of film about the dangers of nuclear weapons out there. And this is not really a thing as much anymore. It's not like it's gone away. In many ways, it's probably gotten more complex and potentially more dangerous. I think there's this sense now that it's either been resolved or it's really just the issue of who is at the leadership role. When you have one administration in power, you get concerned about it, but you have another in power, it's fine. When really there's things that are involved in how we manage our nuclear weapons, how we treat deterrence discussions, how we as a public should care a lot more about these areas. There really is not as much at least at the front of people's minds, which, in some ways is healthy because you go insane thinking about it for that long. But it's also, you could go dead if you don't think about it. You don't push towards some sort of more sane policy and sane arrangement. So at a minimum, people should care about it because it's a major issue that could face us. It's one of those low stakes, big impact things that we need to find a way to kind of address. So people need to think about it. And really, I think one of the other thing is particularly younger folk need to think about it because we need better ideas on this. Some of the people who have been around for quite a long time, I think the thinking on some of these issues has gotten a little stale, and new ideas need to come forward. And I'm seeing a lot of that already in terms of policy changes and policy discussions. And we need more of that. So we need people to be interested because we tried everything and need new ideas.